national recording artist Sexyy Red, whose name is Janae Wary, drawing criticism tonight over her behavior and performance after a student rally Wednesday at Chaffetz.
She got kicked out of the school for her dysfunctional behavior, and she bragged about how she was coming back around.
I'm coming back around.
The organization involved telling First Alert 4 tonight she was never even invited.
As the cycle of toxic behavior continues, she somehow keeps on getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah, they said that I sell my soul. Should I just tell them the truth?
The question I have is it ever gonna stop? And who's behind the machine that's pushing her?
Yes, they got me in this. I don't know. I can't get out of it. I'm getting too much money.
Now, Sexyy Red, a name most people by this point recognize. She's currently one of the hottest female rappers in the industry, has amassed a whole lot of success in a relatively short time. She's in fact one of the most streamed women in hip-hop right now, has received co-signs from Nicki Minaj, collaborated with Drake, and it doesn't look like things are slowing down for her anytime soon. In this video, we're not going to talk too much about the success of Sexyy Red because it's pretty clear that she is in fact a success judging by the standards of the music industry. As long as you can garner attention, whether it's negative or positive, you will be rewarded monetarily, and so will anyone who's backing you up. I do, however, want to talk about the dysfunction of Sexyy Red, because Sexyy Red is in fact pretty dysfunctional. Janae Wary, professionally known as Sexyy Red, is someone who's no stranger to backlash, as she's received a lot of criticism ever since her blow-up in early 2023. A lot of the criticism has stemmed from a wide range of things. However, the focal point of it all being the explicit content in her music and the negative influence of it. More importantly though, I want to focus on the behavior she's exuded in a few different instances. Back in November 2023, a viral story involving Sexyy Red and a teacher ended up hitting the headlines. The reason for that was this video right here.
And another thing that's heart-wrenching is horrifying. Your 5-year-old daughters are asking to listen to Pound Town. Your 5-year-old daughters are asking, can we hear Pound Town? I'm playing them Princess Tiana ballet music, and they are asking me, can we hear Pound? And I'm so scared for these little girls today because this is the most insane agenda push I have ever seen in my life.
The video in question was of a young ballet teacher who was voicing her frustration regarding the children in her class singing along to one of her most explicit records, Pound Town, the song that catapulted her to fame. A very normal reaction from a woman whose job is to be around these young girls all day, who also knows what it's like growing up as that young girl herself, and she was seeing the negative impact Sexyy Red's music was having on these young girls. Sexyy Red, however, didn't agree with the teacher's criticism and quickly dismissed her comments by saying, "Girl, shut the hell up and play my song." The main concern the teacher had, which she brought up, was related to her not liking the idea of children being exposed to sexually provocative content. Sexyy Red is someone who benefits from people consuming said content because that's the main theme in her music. The dysfunctional aspect of this, of course, being her lack of willingness to acknowledge the fact that her music is inappropriate for little girls or children in general. This entire story resulted in a wave of backlash for Sexyy Red, and on the other end, support for the teacher, as a lot of people were calling out her ignorance. Now, it didn't result in much as Sexyy Red still continues to climb in the industry.
Schools across the St. Louis region were unexpectedly exposed to an uninvited performance in the parking lot by a rapper.
So look, so this school put me, I came up here, got you, trying to talk to the kids, getting the word of that, they gonna put me on me. Tell me I smell like weed, watch this. My job hard. Every day I'm fighting for my life.
A few weeks ago, Sexyy Red made headlines after she got kicked out of a school in her hometown of St. Louis for smelling like marijuana, something she ended up responding to after the fact. As you could hear, she wasn't too happy about not being allowed to talk to the kids in the school. Whether or not she was actually booked to be there or not, nobody really knows, but if she was, that would obviously be way worse, because why are you smelling like marijuana when you know that you're about to speak to a bunch of little children? I wish I knew the answer to that question, but from her perspective, she didn't do anything wrong. What ended up happening in the end is Sexyy Red pulled up to the front of the school with her car and turned up with the kids despite the fact that they didn't want her on the property. which that in itself is an issue. The kind of thing any average human being would have faced real repercussions for. I guess when you're famous, rich, and poppin', consequences don't come with the package, right? Now this is standard behavior for Sexyy Red though. In all the controversy she's been involved in, Sexyy Red has always been very dismissive of any criticism that points out her dysfunction. The most concerning thing here is that a lot of these stories involve children and how her actions might be affecting them negatively. However, it seems like she doesn't care all that much about the negative influence she's having on them. The reason behind why that's the case, well, Sexyy Red has been getting heavily rewarded for showing up in this way. Where is the incentive for her to actually change her ways? The 4C hair comments. Sexyy Red recently decided to make a post on her Instagram showing off her hair. In the midst of showing off her hair, she indirectly made some disparaging comments about 4C hair. That's the hair type that most black people naturally have, for anyone who doesn't know. You carpet, hair, beanie, neck, hoes could never, Sexyy Red said as she was showing off her straightened hair in this video. Most of us know that straight hair is synonymous with white hair, which is the opposite of 4C hair. Sexyy Red got a lot of backlash for this, which I think was justified. She ended up responding to the backlash by saying, I F with people with carpet hair. They're cool, but if you're talking smack, I'ma call you carpet hair. Nothing against my fellow 4C hoochies. Not the best response, especially from a PR standpoint, but then again, this is kind of normal for Sexyy Red. So I wouldn't say that this is surprising at all. I mean, here's a woman who literally became famous by leaning into an extremely negative stereotype of black people, more specifically black women. I will say that it is paradoxical how she literally insulted the bulk of her audience with her comments. It's almost like she knows that there's no repercussions to her words. Speaking of dysfunction, let's talk about one of the more viral moments involving Sexyy Red, which involves the infamous tape that went viral. Back in October of last year, Sexyy Red went viral after a video surfaced on the internet. Now the video didn't surface by itself, which is the catch here. She herself ended up posting it on her Instagram story. After a few minutes, she deleted it, but it was already too late at that point. The video spread all over the internet and her not so pink coochie went viral. Right after this, she responded to the video going viral on Twitter by saying, I'm so heartbroken. Anybody that know me knows I wouldn't do no goofy stuff like that. Sexyy Red was insinuating that the tape had gotten leaked accidentally. Her explanation was, the video was saved on my phone. I was on my Instagram when I ended up throwing my phone, and that's how it got uploaded. I think anyone with a functioning brain understands that this tape leaking was of course intentional. It was just one of the pieces that was needed in order for her to continue rising, and it worked. A lot of new people discovered her as a result of it, which was a part of the plan. The visual aspect, i.e. her bare coochie being all out like this, is very consistent with how she's actually being marketed. The overall theme of her music, of course, being sex. That's what Red sells. It's literally a part of her stage name, so it doesn't take a genius to figure that out. Keep in mind that her biggest song, Pound Town, has a line about what color her poom poom is. So when people have visual evidence, they can connect to that, and her poom poom ends up not being so pink. What do you think that's gonna lead to? Obviously a viral moment, and that's exactly what happened. Mission accomplished. The most disturbing part about the story is the fact that a large percentage of her audience consists of little children, specifically young black girls. Her attaching her name to this tape and leaking it like this means that they most likely saw it. Is it her responsibility to raise these little girls? Absolutely not. But as a child, most of us have looked up to some kind of public figure, whether that be a musician, actor, or whatever. Imagine your role model deliberately leaking their own private parts for the entire world to see, just to promote themselves and pretending like that's not what they did. What kind of message does that send to the young minds of the world who are watching this go down? Now, I refuse to draw a line after this tape because she was already no muy bueno before this, but it is kind of sad how an artist can get so heavily rewarded for something so vile. This is why Sexyy Red is in the position she's in, by the way. Being willing to promote yourself as a public figure in ways that are degenerate is the cheat code. The more of your ethics, morals, and values you're willing to strip away for the attention is the more benefit you're gonna see. I didn't create the industry, that's just how it is. Before we continue talking, let's go over the archetype of a Sexyy Red, because this is one of the most important aspects of why she was chosen. I did say chosen, and that's exactly what it is. For anyone who still hasn't realized this, Sexyy Red was handpicked by the industry to play the position she's currently in. You need to understand that nothing, especially as it relates to the music industry, a billion-dollar industry, happens by mistake. Here we have one of the most viral artists on the internet climbing by the second. She's not the best rapper, doesn't make the best music, although she has a couple bangers, I must say. She's kind of trashy by her own standards, doesn't portray herself as the most morally inclined human being. Despite all this, she continues to climb. And the question is, how is this level of rise even possible? That's a question a lot of people are asking as it relates to Sexyy Red. There's a lot of angles we could look at this from, whether it's the marketing aspect of her personality. A lot of money has been dumped into promoting Sexyy Red. At this point, it's definitely in the millions, which is crazy to say because she still is a fairly new artist. But one of the answers to that question, I'd argue the most important one, is this. Sexyy Red is a walking caricature of a very big group of people. Black women. The word caricature derives from the Italian word caricare, which means to load or exaggerate. The English definition is as follows: the art of making, drawing, or written spoken description of someone that usually makes them look silly by making part of their appearance or character more noticeable than it really is. Annibale Carracci, who was an influential Italian painter of the late 16th and 17th century, played a crucial part in the development of Western art. Alongside his brother Agostino, Annibale is credited with initializing the inclusion of characters in modern-day art form. Characters have since then become a very powerful tool used mostly as propaganda by the media to either present a false image of a big group of people or to condemn said people by displaying them as foolish. In 1938, the Nazis organized a public exhibition in Dusseldorf, Germany. The exhibition in question included a poster displaying a cartoon caricature of an African-American male playing on a saxophone with the Star of David on his tuxedo. This was their attempt at vilifying jazz music, which they deemed as NIGGR music. We may live in 2024 where the world is more inclusive than it used to be, but the subtle use of caricatures, especially in the music industry, signals that we still have a lot of work to do. In a world dominated by media propaganda that shapes our perspective of things, but especially people, Sexyy Red is being used as a tool by the music industry to further propagate a negative view of black people as a whole, but especially black women. The black woman has since the dawn of time undoubtedly been the most disrespected woman on the planet, going all the way back to the Jezebel Stereotype, which was a social construct that was created during slavery. The black woman was portrayed as a hypersexual and sexually voracious woman whose value to society was purely based on her sexuality and her body. That preconceived notion had a lot of drawbacks. The stereotype, among many things, justified a wide range of abuse against the black woman's body. Hip-hop, a black art form that was started with the sole purpose to empower young black Americans, has unfortunately been used by the music industry as a tool to further propagate that very thing black women and the good black men have been fighting against. Sexyy Red herself is that walking stereotype. The overall theme in her music is consistent with the same ideas the Jezebel Stereotype promotes. While Sexyy Red's virality keeps getting more intense by the second, and the industry that propped her up continues to profit off of a false stereotype she's pushing, an entire community of people get wrongfully judged for the actions of one person. Black people are not a monolith though, so what am I actually even saying right now? The question here isn't whether or not we are the same, because black people are not all the same. If they haven't told you, we're not all the same. We're different as human beings, from different backgrounds to different personalities to different hobbies to different interests and all the other intricacies that comes with this thing called the complexity of being a human being. That is not the concern here. The concern, however, is that mainstream media has portrayed us as a monolith. I never blame individual people for falling into this trap. However, I do blame the larger system, which is compiled by individuals, for broadcasting one aspect of an entire group of people. Sexyy Red is not only directly but openly contributing to that negative view of her own kind in a way that I honestly think is disgusting. However, Red is an openly trash and ratchet chick from the hood who became rich and famous by validating a false and negative stereotype of her own people. A negative stereotype which black women have been fighting against for centuries. And by the way, she's obviously no different from a lot of the other women in the game. The only difference is that Sexyy Red is the one who's in the focal point at this very moment. Now, do I think it takes an immoral person being put in this type of position, if you will, who's willing to promote oneself in this way? Yes. But I also recognize that it's not her job to project anything other than what she actually is, which is why there's a tiny, tiny part of me that doesn't blame her. Just a tiny part. After all, for Sexyy Red to thrive, there has to be a demand from the market. On top of that, there has to be someone who's willing to bet on her. White men. Now, this is when we get to the strange side of the industry. Because here's the thing. For Sexyy Red to be on such an elevated platform, she has to have a stable foundation that's allowing her to maintain balance in the game. She can't do that herself. Let's just say that there's a slew of highly powerful people in the music industry who are heavily invested in her success. Now, those people won't be named because I can't physically point them out. Even if I could, I'm actually not sure if I would, because your boy is trying to see another day. It is what it is. Don't hate the player, hate the corrupt game that controls everything. When it comes to how the music industry is set up and the powers that be, this is usually how everything operates. It's very similar to the Puppeteer Marionette dynamic, something Denzel Curry showcased in a very bold and blatant fashion on his song Cloud Cobain. In other words, just like how a puppeteer would control an object through pulling the strings necessary in order to create movement, that same performance can be seen in the music industry. However, it's way more subtle than you would think. There's always someone who's controlling what's being televised, and Sexyy Red is the actor who's being used to tell that vision. Television. Television. This person or entity has enough influence to govern what the different channels on the network are allowed to broadcast. The word broadcast derives from widely spreading seeds over a large area when planting. Now the word is used to describe sending out programs through radio or television. How that plays out in the music industry is, imagine the major record labels as these channels, and the different channels all have separate agendas. However, they're all meant to serve the program that's set by the network, i.e. the corporations. Television or television has been around as entertainment for human beings for decades and decades. The first electronic television was successfully demonstrated in San Francisco on September 7, 1927. The system was designed by a fellow Farnsworth, who at the age of 15 years old had worked out the principle of the image dissector. A few years later, at the age of 21, he finally concluded a working version of this device we call a television. Philo hoped television would help families and communities share stories, become less ignorant of each other, and even lead world peace. Ironically enough, Philo himself didn't allow his children to watch TV. There's nothing on it worthwhile, and we're not gonna watch it in this household, and I don't want it in your intellectual diet, Philo was quoted saying. Despite the entertainment factor of this box we call a television, whether or not television changes the structure of one's consciousness has been speculated since it was introduced to the world. Television viewing, along with the act of listening to music, produces an alpha brainwave pattern state. Alpha is associated with a relaxed and attentive condition, which further supports the notion that television is a low consciousness activity. Increasing alpha brainwaves is generally considered safe and beneficial for most people. However, too much of it has been proven to lead to drowsiness, daydreaming, or lack of focus. This is an aspect that's not very talked about, especially as it relates to music. Music has for a very long time been used as a form of hypnosis or mind control, if you will. Hearing your favorite song at the right time at the right frequency will naturally put you in a state of trance. Not something that's inherently bad unless the content being fed into your subconscious mind is of a lower frequency, something the late XXXTentacion famously spoke about before he died.
What's the point of music? It's not always to have fun. It's not always to have fun. Sometimes it's to help people find themselves, because music is frequency programming. What frequency are you being fed? I will hope before they go pull some negative shit out this conversation, they pull this part of the conversation. At 15 years old, I was doing sound engineering. So I was playing with frequency. I was playing with equalizers. I figured out that hertz is to understand the frequency vibration, right? If I play with those frequencies, right, I can target certain parts of the mind. If I want you to astral project, or if I want you to go to sleep, or if I want you to go into a meditative state, I can make my music do that.
Have you ever seen those videos of children singing along to a song that may be inappropriate for a younger audience? Speaking of the devil, this video right here is a good example. What you're seeing is a form of hypnosis. The frequency of the music impacts the young mind in a way that's not so overt. From the outside, the only thing we're seeing is music being played and children singing and dancing along to it. Seems pretty innocent, right? On a deeper level, however, there's something else going on. Pictures are being painted in the subconscious mind, and these are not images that are very productive, especially to children. Everything from the lyrical content to the visuals that appear along with the music to how she's being marketed to the world. Red is a very carefully crafted personality, or that's what it feels like to me at least. She's a walking stereotype that's supposed to be a representation of that large group of people, being black women, of course. The question still stands, what really is the negative impact of an artist like Red, and why is it so important that we wake up to the truth about this? Well, for starters, Red's existence in this industry is for the sole purpose of capitalizing on a false stereotype of an entire race of people. Black Americans have been fighting against pervasive stereotyping for hundreds of years. The world has come very far during this time, but not far enough because figures of similar archetypes have a tendency to gain a lot of popularity in pop culture. Why is the world so attracted to the dysfunction of black people? Why? Can we just question that for a second? According to a Pew Research survey of nearly 5,000 black adults, black Americans see a range of problems in news coverage of black people. Most of them say that black people are covered more negatively than people in other racial and ethnic groups. Almost 2/3 of black adults say news about black people is often more negative than news about other racial and ethnic groups. Only 7% say it's often more positive. The unfair coverage of black Americans in the media is no secret. Stories of violence and abuse often get prioritized in the headlines over positive stories, a destructive pattern that continues to propagate the worst sides of an entire group of people. Pop culture, but hip-hop specifically, has been utilized by the corporations to strengthen this image of black people, but more specifically, black Americans, for decades. Figures like Red and other artists have been placed in a spotlight to counteract the positive image of the black woman and man. While a very few select individuals, entities, and billion-dollar corporations benefit from this narrow and false image they're promoting, the rest of us have to deal with the negatives that come with the propagation of this false image. Red is promoting some very destructive ideologies, both in her music and outside of it, with her actions. With 67% of African American children living in a single-parent household, which has been proven to negatively affect the upbringing of the child, Red's music serves as a soundtrack for that family structure which plagues so many black families all over the country. The promotion of baby mama culture and a lifestyle that goes against the formation of the nuclear family isn't something black families need more of. The advocacy of these ideologies and this lifestyle comes with a big monetary incentive. This is why artists like Red are usually the archetype of rappers that receive the most amount of popularity. Becoming popular in rap used to be so much more than who can promote the most vile things on a record. That was until the rise of gangster rap in the 80s, when the major corporations who owned the music realized how they could use it to their advantage. All they had to do was provide black youth with a microphone, a platform, and an incentive to promote negativity to their community. The art form then went from being used as a tool to fight oppression to validating the worst aspects of the black community. Black male rappers have since the 80s used the art of rap to sadly not only promote violence against their own kind, but denigrate the women in their community by subjecting them to a sex object, while at the same time celebrating the women who are of a lighter skin complexion. On the other hand, black women suffer as much, if not more, due to the music industry using the female rapper to portray them as voracious sex objects. Red is the perfect model of what we're talking about. It works extremely well with her, specifically because she's proven herself as someone who lacks a moral compass. One of the biggest deciding factors as to whether or not you get put in a position of power is your level of integrity. The less of it you have, the higher probability you'll get selected as one of the many agents of dysfunction. This is why rappers like Red seem to effortlessly gain so much popularity, despite anything that comes their way. Their success in the industry has already been predetermined with the help of a selection process that evaluates them on a deep level as human beings before they get access to any type of platform. The music industry is a billion-dollar industry that can't afford to give the keys to the people who won't follow suit. The more you're willing to strip away your morals, ethics, and principles, the higher likelihood you'll have an entry to the game. Just take a look at the most popular artists. What percentage of those artists are actually promoting things that are good for the youth? You tell me. Red has already accepted everything that comes with her decision to sell herself and her people out by promoting the worst parts of her community. A big part of this process involves certain rituals that must be done before the benefits come. In Red's case, one of the things she did was leak her own tape to solidify her commitment to the position. This was done in order to connect the dots between the false image of the black woman she's portraying and herself. We also have her dismissing the negative impact of her music on children. Part of the reason why she's been planted as an agent of chaos and dysfunction is so she can infiltrate the minds of young black girls. This is consistent with one of the qualities the music industry seeks in artists they put at the forefront to promote certain destructive agendas, which is immorality. Those who stand for nothing will fall for anything. In Red's case, her loyalty is with money and fame and not with her people. We also have the promotional run for her song F My Baby Dad. As she was getting closer and closer to the birth of her child, Red recorded an unofficial music video in the hospital to her song F My Baby Dad, which is pretty self-explanatory. A big aspect of branding is adding context to what it is that you're intending to promote. This was her adding that context, which further capitalizes on the false stereotype she's pushing. Now, despite everything we've talked about so far, the truth of the matter is this: Red is a product of her environment. This is a perspective that highly is in favor of her, and I'm not afraid to vocalize this aspect at all. I may not be a fan of Red, but I can recognize why she appeals so strongly to a lot of people. I still stand by the fact that I don't believe she's a good representation of the black woman. Personally, I hold the opinion that she's the worst representation possible. However, taking all my emotions out of it, she is a black woman, and that's something nobody can take away from her, ever. She's also a representation of a very large group of women. It's estimated that 14% of the US population of women is black, and 7% of the total US population. That accounts to over 20+ million women. Keep in mind that this is only in the United States. She's also not afraid to take up space. Red, if you guys haven't noticed, is very loud and she's very fierce. These are attributes the average person doesn't naturally carry inside of them. Most of us are afraid of being overtly audacious.
Some stanky booty ass just walk past me and farted.
But not Sexyy Red, and this is directly connected to one of the primary needs we crave as human beings, which is the need to be accepted. Fear of rejection is the biggest dream killer of all, and it can cripple you, just like how it's crippled a lot of your favorite public figures. This is something that does specifically speak to the black woman on an internal level, because historically speaking, the black woman had to fight tooth and nail just to get seen and heard. Let's not mention the hundreds of years of putting up with abuse, which is directly interwoven with people not listening to you. That's something that will shape the rest of your lineage in a certain way. Being forced to build that defense mechanism over a long period of time has certainly something to do with why so many black women cheer Red on. At least that's what I think. Because look at it like this: they don't see a person promoting dysfunction when they look at her. They see a melanated woman who comes from St. Louis, of all places, the murder capital of the United States.
They shooting these guns out here, they done lost their damn mind.
People are fed up with the homicides that seemingly happen daily now in St. Louis.
Basically, I get out and do what I can do and try to get back in safe.
Who, just like them, had all the cards stacked against her on a global stage, making millions of dollars by being herself. If she can run it up by being herself, then that gives us hope that we can do the same. And you know what they say, selling hope is one of the most lucrative business models. Just take a look at motivational speaker, life coach, and author Tony Robbins, who has an estimated net worth of over $600 million. What is it exactly that a guy like that sells? Well, it comes back to hope. Hope that one can become the best version of themselves, no matter their current circumstances in life. Hope could serve as one of the most powerful driving forces next to love, which both have the capacity to propel you forward in your life, especially if you need a real-life example that shows you the possibilities of what one could accomplish. It's directly connected to the desire of winning in life, which we all have inside of us. Human beings don't usually believe until they see, and Red is a very visible example of what it means to be a success, at least in the material world, which is the only thing that matters to most people anyway. For what it's worth, Red is a role model to a lot of these women and little girls. A lot of times, the support that follows the success of another human being isn't always necessarily about what they've done. It's about how what they've accomplished is connected to the human being who's watching them succeed. What exactly does her success communicate to all these women who are watching her prosper? That's the million-dollar question. Overall, Sexyy Red is here to stay. She's only getting bigger by the second, and it doesn't look like that's gonna stop anytime soon. Do I think she's a net negative to the genre of hip-hop? I will say yes, mostly based on how she shows up as a person. I can tolerate the music because music is subjective after all. The biggest issue I have with Red is the constant lack of character she's exuded. It doesn't seem like she takes her position all that seriously, and I think that's where the danger lies. Setting a positive example to the millions of children, more specifically young girls who follow you, to your best ability as a public figure is the bare minimum if you ask me. With that being said, she's clearly here to run up her bag, so make sure you raise your children and don't leave it up to celebrities because they don't care. Anyway, back like I never left. The Dysfunction of Sexyy Red. If you made it this far, drop a like cause, like I said, I'm back like I never left. Appreciate you guys for the support. Thank you guys for the very considerate messages during my little hiatus. Trust me when I say that I missed you. Feels good to be back, man. Feels really good. Stay safe out there and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Peace.